behalf of the PKE Alumni Executive Planning Committee, I'm Bill Barkovitz, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's faculty speaker series. This is our third installment of 5, and today's series is going to be Unlocking and Igniting Brand Purpose. Next slide. And one more. So I'd like to thank the PKE Executive Planning Committee, Alan, Jeanette, Amy, and also special thank you to the Alumni Engagement Team, Jason, Bridget, and also the PKE Faculty Committee for putting this together and making this happen. Slide. So in addition to today's session, we've got 2 more planned. One in June, which is Dr. John Scully, Professor of Finance, and one in August covering strategy with Dr. Kurt Motamedi. I had both of them during my time at PKE, and they're fantastic. So I really encourage everybody to join and look at those sessions. A little background on this speaker series and how this came about. For those of you who didn't go, we had a fantastic in-person PKE summit back in 2019. And during that summit, Dean Van Rensburg challenged the alumni to continue the momentum and continue to grow the community, the PKE community. So we were planning another in-person event, another summit. It was supposed to happen in 2020, and then COVID came along, so no dice. So we thought, okay, how are we going to keep people engaged? And so this was one way to do it. We put together this faculty speaker series. So it's one way to stay connected and also for us to continue our lifelong learning, a commitment that we all made when we started at Pepperdine. This next slide, we're just trying to remind everybody, join Pep Connect if you haven't already. This is the location to be connected to the PKE community and the Graziadio Business School. So please join that slide. And also, obviously, one way to continue to grow the PKE community, the alumni community, is to have more alumni. And how do we do that? Is by having more students and people go through the program. So please refer people, your colleagues, friends, people that you think will benefit from the program, and also that will benefit the PKE community. Pearl Quintana, who most of you know, is the Associate Director. Her contact info is there, so please get a hold of Pearl for any prospective students. So this is today's agenda. Just wanted to remind people, if you want to share your information with everybody who's on this call, you can opt in with a form on through the chat. And then also, please don't forget to mute your mics. Now, during the session, there may be some times when you're asked questions, so you can unmute at that time, but for the most part, keep them muted. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. David Smith. He is Professor of Economics, Associate Provost of Online Programs, and the Chair of PKE Faculty Committee, who will introduce today's speaker. Take it away, Dr. Smith.
Oh, thank you very much, Bill, and really pleased to be here today and introduce our speaker. Just a couple of updates from the PKE committee first. First off, on behalf of the committee and many of the faculty, for those of you who are alumni of the program, just a warm welcome and trust you are well. We are meeting with our PKE 145 current cohort in Nevada, a little kind of a quietly kept secret at Pepperdine. We're the only program that's meeting on ground currently at Pepperdine, and we went outside the confines of the state to do so. And we'll continue, and we'll kick off our new cohort in May outside the state, that at least the current plan, unless things change really well in terms of California, when we can move our cohorts back in the state. This is the time of year the PKE program committee goes through and reviews data, and we are of a mindset of continuous improvement. Our goal is to make the program better for you so that your affiliation and alumni status with the program will increase value over time. So we're reviewing data, looking for areas that we can improve the program, And I appreciate your participation when you are surveyed or asked for input about your experience in PKE, that you take advantage of those opportunities. But moving on to our main event, the reason we're all here today, it's my privilege to introduce our speaker. In her role as Chief Purpose Officer, Denise Roberson is leading some of the biggest brands in the world to actuate their business case for purpose through focusing on a scalable, differentiated, and business goals-oriented approach. In this capacity, Denise is helping companies connect their brands to purpose and use this unified voice to create linkages and unity across the entire stakeholder wheel. TBWA Chiat Day has worked with Fortune 500 and world-class brands around the globe, such as Apple, Gatorade, Google Cloud, Principal Financial Group, McDonald's, Intuit's QuickBooks, and the Grammys. Denise is adept at leading high-performance teams, fostering collaborative relationships through the entire stakeholder ecosystem, and envisioning innovation within complex organizational settings. She has corporate social responsibility and triple bottom line expertise, and is a marketing professor for your own PKE program. She is a trusted board member, speaker, moderator, keynote, and host for top-tier events, and she is currently pursuing her doctoral degree in Lausanne, Switzerland, and exploring the use of technology in connecting a corporation's sustainable efforts to brand value, and researching the frameworks and models necessary to implement these initiatives and integrate purpose and sustainability as a core component of all future brands. With that, Denise, welcome, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. First of all, I just want to send a warm welcome to everyone here. I have so many friendly faces, friends, people from my cohorts I've taught. So thank you guys for being here today. The hope is to bring a little energy and to get through some slides. We're going to quickly pace through, and what we're going to do is see a few different things. We're going to lay out the business case of purpose to really understand why it's more than just a fuzzy nice to have. We're going to look at some big stats, and then I'm going to make some bold claims along the way. In a few areas, remember, once I go into presenter mode, I can't see your beautiful faces. So at some points, I'm going to ask you, take yourself off mute, engage in this conversation, and let's take this journey together. So very quickly, let me go into presentation mode. All right. Let me know if we are seeing everything. Bill, I can see you. Can you give me a thumbs up if we're on the screen? Awesome. All right. So as Dave just said, I wear a lot of hats. I'm serving as the first ever Chief Purpose Officer for TBWA Chiat Day. It's a huge international conglomerate. We have agencies around the world. And I have to say, it's a really exciting adventure in this day and age. But my favorite jobs and my favorite affiliations are being a wave. So being a marketing professor for PKE has been absolutely incredible. I'm a Graziadio board member, but an alumna of PKE 131, so love representing with my PKE crew. We're going to talk about unlocking and igniting purpose. It's a huge topic. So if there's something in here that you feel like, hey, I want to take one click down, you can put it in the chat, and Bill's going to help me out with what we can find and see and talk about today. But let's get going. Okay, so pop quiz. First thing we're going to do. Does your company have an actuated purpose? Not something that's written on the wall somewhere, but something that you're actually driving against, something that's been crafted. And you've got a couple of different responses, yes, no, and we're starting to. So I'm just curious where this group is at. Right now, our yeses are in the lead. I love seeing that. Let's just give it a couple more seconds. Ooh, yeses are crushing right now. This is awesome. I have found my people. All right. So I think what we're going to take away from this is a lot of people are starting to drive from a corporate level from this thing we call purpose. And we're going to walk through some of the reasons why that's a good idea, but also some of the pitfalls and some of the things that we may not want to miss. Okay. And my slides don't want to advance, of course. Okay, so bold statement. Purpose is the North Star that helps companies navigate and thrive in our brave new world. And we're going to talk a lot about what that means. It's about creating filters for decision making, uniting departments and business functions, connecting employees, and accelerating progress and innovation. So I want you to wipe out this notion that purpose is just a nice to have or a warm and fuzzy. And I want you to put your strategic hats on. Dr. Matamati would be proud, and start looking at this through a different lens. Okay, how did this happen? We look at this postulation that values plus technology times 2020 created a new normal. The crises of 2020, COVID, social inequities, soaring unemployment, climate change. I mean, the list really goes on and on. It's supercharged a shift in consumer, employee, and investor values, while technology increased speed and transparency, resulting in this new normal we've all been thrust in. So it's kind of a recipe of the perfect storm that got us here. And no, before anyone says it, it's not a fad. This has been happening for about 20 years, and purpose with a capital P. It's about adapting to stakeholder expectations. This is a way to create 21st century value, lower risk, and foster a more innovative and engaged workforce. Big stat, we're looking at purpose-led companies outperforming the S&P by upwards of 10x. So again, definitely not a fad we're looking at. And it's not just the right thing to do. This is smart business. So purpose falsely gets lumped into the soft and fuzzy camp. But the truth of the matter is that it's got a lot of metrics behind it. So we're going to go quickly through some big stats to just show you sort of the business case as to why this is not to be taken lightly. 69% of customers globally say to be more credible than your competitors. So this is how we're competing. A company must talk about its behavior and impact on society and environment, not just customer products and benefits. So those days, they're behind us. And now customers want to know holistically what you're doing with your brand. 71% agree that if they perceive that a brand is putting profits over people, they'll lose trust in that brand forever. And we all know those statistics. It's so much more expensive to get a customer than it is to keep a customer. So we want to keep that in that huge 71 percentile. And here we go again. 2/3 of all customers believe it's the responsibility of business to take a leadership role in solving key issues facing society. This is something new, and new stats were just released a couple of days ago. This is not just B2C. This is absolutely B2B and everybody in between. So this is now the highest time of record where we can see brands being obligated to have a position, not every issue, but some issues that align with their mission, vision, and values, and ultimately their purpose. So the value proposition, we talked a little bit about this. I want to show you why this is good business and all the things that when we're driving into purpose, we can actually affect. Here we go with the brand value, a 3 to 5x. That is a big number when we look at companies like Apple and their valuations that are deeply impacted by this intangible brand value number. Growth, they're growing 2 times faster. Innovation is 30% higher. It improves risk by upwards of 50%. We look at things like agility, which is a 68% improvement. So the list goes really on here as to all the great things that you can do by actually driving into the business case for purpose. But what does all of this take? And here's really something you need to take into consideration. It's bravery. Leaders with bravery, companies with bravery, employees with bravery. So I want to talk about one of these necessary ingredients and look at a video of Lee Clow, who developed the iconic work that broke down barriers and really developed the entire Apple brand side by side with Steve Jobs. and produced what's cited as the best ad of all time, which is 1984. But he's got some words that really resonated with me that I wanted to share with you today.
Don't do the right thing. God knows you'll be tempted. The right thing sounds so good in meetings. It looks fantastic in charts. The right thing soothes racing pulses and settles churning stomachs. Everybody can get on board with the right thing. The right thing is good enough. But good enough is not enough. Don't do it. Don't do the right thing. Avoid it like the plague. So what are you supposed to do? The wrong thing? Of course not. Do the brave thing. The thing that troubles your sleep. The thing with a million unknowns. That seems ridiculous one moment and genius the next. That's the thing you should do. Chase it down. Don't let it go. Do the thing that disrupts, that upends, that doesn't just defy the status quo, but reshapes it forever. You can do that. You have that in you. To do the right thing or not is a choice. To disrupt or not is a choice. Let's do the brave thing.
Okay, and why are we asking you to be brave? It's because of this recipe of today's stakeholders, and they expect so much more. Transparency has never been higher, information has never traveled faster, and social media and citizen journalists, everyone with a mobile phone is now considered a journalist. So information is traveling at light speed and transparency is at an all-time high. Here are some of the things that we're looking at now. 20 years ago, the composition of a board of directors would never be looked at by a 20-year-old trying to decide whether or not to buy cosmetics from a company. But today we've got, if Black Lives Matter to your brand, where are your Black board members? There was Stop Hate for Profit, and it forced Zuckerberg to change Facebook policies along with a lot of major advertisers literally pulling their advertising from Facebook. On Earth Day, it moved to unseat a JP Morgan director and a warning about greenwashing. We just saw Dannon, CEO, that was unseated, unfortunately. And a new normal of awful COVID-themed commercials. There was a backlash. Anybody that was just putting out content to jump on the bandwagon truly had a backlash to that. And what happened was customers and employees want value. That's what they're looking to drive against. So why is this changing a bit? Again, we're back to this holistic 360 view. They're looking in ways we've never experienced before, and it's at the touch of your fingertips. Right now, if you were to go on Google, you can find two very simple things. Did they help? And this is a way to find out if companies and celebs reacted to the coronavirus pandemic, the BLM movement, LGBTQ plus rights. And let me tell you, if your name comes up here, it's not a good thing. We also have a law firm in San Francisco that did a racial justice exclusion list. Type in a company or their ticker symbol, and you can see just about everything you wanted to know. So I'm going to make a bit of a postulation here. Today, everything the business does is the brand. Years ago, brands were singularly created by the business in a vacuum and pushed out to the world as one-way communication. Now, brands are co-created across the entire stakeholder wheel, and customers, employees, actors, activists, the media, NGO, governments, and more, they all help to define your brand. That terrifies most companies, but it's better to embrace where we actually are. So here's this moving from and moving to state. It's really important because it's an and, not an or. Purpose is an additive. So we're still going to have to create products, comms, customer service, POS. But on the right side in this moving to state, you're going to see all the things that are now part of your brand. We've got partnerships, employees, governance, supply chain, leadership, corporate culture, and the acronym SOUP, CSR, DEI, ESG, and very high on that list is corporate values. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is just to say this is additive. You still have to have the table stakes of products and services, but this is an addition to. But all of this together, if you put this together and sort of mix it all up, the new normal raises new questions, challenges, and trade-offs. Here are some of the things you might be hearing or asking. When do I act? When do I stay quiet? Who do I partner with? Where do I invest? How do we get leadership aligned to accelerate transformation? And here are some of the things that might be coming up. My best talent keeps leaving. I can't pay them more to stay. That's usually a cultural thing based on purpose. How do we grow? How do we channel growing employee activism in something that unites rather than divides us? How many walkouts have we seen that we're crushing to business momentum? We're doing some great things, but we're not getting credit for them. That's typically how purpose is being communicated. So we see there's sort of this new mixture coming up of things that we have to work through. So we started this conversation with purpose is the North Star that helps companies navigate and thrive in our brave new world. And why is that? Because it creates this powerful lens for decision making. It accelerates things like growth and trust and innovation. So this I get asked every day, but don't most brands already have purpose? We've been hearing about brand purpose forever. It was the 2018 marketing word of the year. There were huge announcements from the Business Roundtable, shifting to stakeholder value, and purpose was the cover story of just about every major publication. But here's the rub. While everyone says purpose is important, a lot of people are missing where the value opportunity is. So 84% of leaders believe business transformation efforts will have greater success if integrated with purpose. 46, so almost 50% believe they have a strong sense of purpose. And here it is, those declining steps, only 18% believe that purpose is a part of a business-wide strategy with specific goals and KPIs. And that's the thing to embed in your mind today. That is where this juicy business case with all the value resides, in this final quadrant. And even worse, only 1 in 10 employees can tell you what their purpose actually is. So we're not engaging our employees, who are the ones that have to deliver on this purpose. So yes, I agree. Everyone is talking about purpose, but very few people are getting it right. So when we start looking at actually creating purpose, remember, it's a journey of progress. You cannot flip a light switch and turn purpose on. It's not a strategy or a tagline framed on the wall. It shouldn't come from marketing necessarily. The Genesis idea could, but it cannot stay there and reside only in marketing. This is something that requires strategic evolution across the entire organization. But let's all say it together. What's the enemy of progress? Perfection. You have to be humble. Report on your progress with KPIs, but also own your mistakes, and you'll be making deposits of goodwill and trust in the bank. Just about every company is going to face scrutiny in this day and age of some kind. Having these things in place, being able to report with authenticity and transparency, it's a way to create a protective shield. And why? Because the cost of getting this wrong now is incredibly high. And we've seen this all over the news, on every screen, big and small. We've seen things like employee strikes and activism, figureheads sacrificed, boycotts and cancel culture, just to name a few. So if we look at this again, if we're moving from a product-led culture to a purpose-led culture, a lot of it is the mindset. And this is where I work every day with the C-suite, with the board, is to transition them from looking at purpose as kind of a marketing statement or a campaign and looking at it as an umbrella that goes across the entire organization to create strategic growth. So you may have business units operate in silos. We hear this all the time. Purpose is going to allow you to have collaboration towards one united company. It's the great uniter. Parity products with generic selling points. This is the features and functions arms race to the bottom. But with purpose, we've got a clear reason to believe that's a good uniter. Rigid innovation with pre-existing product categories. All of a sudden, we've moved to flexible innovation that helps elevate society and solve unmet needs. It's an incredible white space. It's an incredible opportunity to compete in a way that's genuinely authentic to your company. And finally, from this place of trying to catch up to accelerated transformation, stakeholders are increasingly connected around purpose. We see trust and engagement and transparency increase. And here we are, the path to purpose. And this is where people start going, okay, how do I get there? And this is really the path we were just referring to. It usually starts with one of these siloed and isolated tactics. This could be a marketing campaign. This could be something where you've done a food drive. This is something you may have rallied your employees together in order to donate time at a charity. But it's definitely something that is more singular in nature, a bit disparate from the rest of the organization, but it's where people start to get their flavor of what it's like to be purposeful. When we move to this brand promise to society, this is a big deal, and this we're going to spend a little bit more time on. This is when we're going to really start crafting that purpose statement, why the business exists. We're going to do a lot of socializing, and we're going to make sure we have buy-in, top down, bottom up. Once we do that, we're going to move into this aligned company-wide strategy. This has to be something highly socialized. This is also when we're going to start bringing partnerships, both internal and external, into creating things with, like, if anyone looks at the UN SDGs, SDG 17, it's all about the partnership. How do we not just educate our customers, but all people? How do we work with our competitors to advance society? The final one is the Holy Grail. This is the business-led movement. This is people like when we look at Patagonia and how they're trying to care for the planet, and Unilever and what they've done with sustainability, and Procter Gamble and how they've approached people and DEI. We're going to go and click down into this second step, this brand promise to society, because this is where it's a real make it or break it. If you don't get this part right, the rest gets very, very difficult. So when we look at a brand promise to society, here is a way to activate this. It's a three-phased approach, and I like to look at it as uncover it, unlock it, and unleash it. So in this uncovering process, this is where we do deep discovery and look at dedicated workshops to really help articulate that voice. We want to rally employees, customers, and investors around this common purpose statement. It's the why the company exists. This is where you're building the North Star that you're going to ask everyone to follow. When you're unlocking it, again, the socialization and consensus building, it's a critical step and one that people often miss. If every employee in your organization can't figure out how to use that purpose in their job and their actions, this purpose will fall flat. So it's really, really critical that we make sure that there is a lot of buy-in and cross-functional activity. We're going to partner with these internal stakeholders and determine appetite and capacity. We don't want to overshoot and we don't want to undershoot. So a bit of a stretch goal here. And this is where you're going to see people get really uncomfortable, because we also have budgets that start come into play. And we have to make sure that leadership has completely adopted this and plans to use this to unlock new opportunities and innovation. So again, here, top down, bottom up, we want to engage the entire organization. Finally, it's unleashing this. This is about designing breakthrough platforms, experiences, and content to deliver on your purpose. We're going to further engage with these existing audiences and forge new ones. This purpose is going to allow you to create partnerships you have not had before. Use that opportunity with both people and with organizations. So this one, when you're unleashing, always remember you have to walk the talk. A lot of organizations may have fantastic purpose plans in place, but if you're not activating them, if you're not actuating them, then you've really lost the power and the ability to build and accrete that value. So a big statement of the day: societal impact is no longer a nice to have. It is a major competitive advantage. Products and services are becoming table stakes. This is where a company can truly differentiate and be poised to win in a very authentic way that's difficult to replicate. And that brings me to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So incredibly important. You can find this on every screen, every newspaper, every magazine, every publication. And I think it's on the minds of just about every business leader, every company, every board, because it's something that became so apparent in 2020 that we still have some deep fractures to contend with. So I want to take a look at a company that I think is doing this well. They're doing a great job using their brand purpose to drive the DEI conversation, and that's Procter Gamble. I want to take a look at this Emmy award-winning spot called The Talk, and it's from their campaign, My Black is Beautiful.
Who said that?
The lady at the store.
That is not a compliment.
It's an ugly, nasty word, and you are going to hear it. Nothing I can do about that. But you are not going to let that word hurt you.
You got your ID? Yeah. Guess I stopped it.
Good. Now, when you get pulled over...
I'm a good driver. Okay?
Baby,
Don't worry.
this is not about you getting a ticket. This is about you not coming home.
I'm gonna be okay. Right? Okay.
You are not pretty for a black girl. You are beautiful, period. Okay? Don't ever forget that.
Okay, guys, so here's where I'm going to ask you to take yourselves off mute. I can't see you, so I would love to hear your voices. What is this commercial about? What are they talking about? Don't be shy.
Strength and confidence.
I believe that's where it's leading to, but what's the actual topic of conversation?
An unconscious bias, perhaps?
Or even conscious. I think it might be both. And then I want to ask you guys, what didn't you see in this spot?
Products.
Exactly. Not a single product to be seen in this spot. But why do you think something like this as a TV spot could be successful for a corporation?
It goes beyond, just product and addresses purpose. We've seen that with Ethos. We've seen that with the sock company, right? That does a really good job where they show these socks that are black that they say that they've never sold, and those were given away for free. So those ads really hit home. It's motivating. It drives the workforce.
Completely agree. We're going to derive energy from customers, from employees, from investors. Anybody else have a thought on why this might be so successful and what it might be part of in terms of the greater organization?
Well, certainly from an employee standpoint as well. It gets your employees, the employees of the company, believing that the company they work for has a bigger purpose than just selling product.
I completely agree with that. But I will tell you one of the ingredients that really activates purpose, ignites it, brings it to life. This wasn't just a series of TV commercials. This was embedded in a much deeper campaign. There was education, there was bias training, there was conscious unbiased training. There were elements to be able to highlight Black-owned companies. There were also moments where they invested heavily in funding Black-owned companies. So it was really this holistic approach. And I thought this was such a great example of how you can take something like your brand as an accelerant, but when you put all the layers underneath it and all the deep, rich touch points that really bring it to life, where you're walking the talk, that's how this award, any winning piece became deeply impactful to the actual organization in creating value. Okay.
But it also depends on whether somebody thinks this is just a facade or whether the organization is thorough at its core. And that's going to be the big question for the next 6 months to a year, is whether you're just putting on to get in or you're putting on because you believe it.
Yep, I agree with you. And I think that will actually stretch longer than 6 months to a year. I think any company that steps up and starts to lead with purpose, it's going to be about walking the talk. What are those actions? Where are your deep commitments? Can you show that you've made traction and forward momentum? Are you transparent about it? And where have you made missteps?
Yeah, and I agree. It's a paradigm shift, and I lose track of the generations X, Y, Z, or whatever it is. But right now, the latest generation is more interested in buying that water bottle, the bottle of water that gives one free or digs wells in Africa, and it's no longer about the Gen Xers, if I'm dating myself, about purely profit and revenue. Simon Sinek in his Infinite Game says, look, the companies that talk that game were, they're good. They last a certain point, but now it's time to talk about the infinite game, the purpose of the organization, things that Apple and Microsoft are now starting to do well.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great observation. And if we look at the fact that in the next year, millennials will comprise over 70% of the workforce, there's a way of protecting. A lot of people somehow haven't resonated with proactive, but if you look at future-proofing your organization, and I'm not talking 10 years down the path, I'm talking right around the corner, we have an entire generation that their motivation is not monetary. That's number 5. Values alignment is number 1 for them. So we have to also take into consideration workforce, hiring top talent, turnover. These are all important things that play into this notion of purpose. Anyone else? I can't see you guys, so feel free to chime in.
Amelia.
Well, I can't see you either. That's uncanny. Yeah, so one of the things that really caught my attention earlier in your talk, and I've been around. I've been around a long, long time, and fortunately learned this lesson a long, long time ago. But one of the things I'm really curious about is if you could give a couple examples of the purpose creating a framework within which decision making is. Anyway, if you mentioned that it affects the decisions you make. Mm-hmm. So on the strategic level, that's a little bit easier to think about, but the trick is getting things to cascade down and around the whole organization. And so if you had an example of how being purpose-driven helped, let's just say, frontline workers make decisions.
Absolutely. I'm going to take another example just because I think it might be easier to see.
Okay.
And I'm going to back that up. I think Unilever is a really great example of how a purpose with a passed down CEO change actually had an incredible impact on the organization on multiple facets. And one of the things they did immediately was they got rid of their quarterly earning calls. So they went into this long-term value creation. Don't misunderstand that they weren't accreting short-term value along the way, but they changed their mindset to look at short-term value as a stepping stone to the long-term value. And what they did when trying to create this sustainable living for all people, and it was 8 billion they were trying to affect, they used that lens to look at products and services. They used that lens to look at decision making as to where the company was going to invest, how the company was going to hire throughout this entire continuum. And it's interesting, they're one of the few companies that have been bold enough now, because they've been chipping at this for so long, to show financial indicators. And what ended up happening is the category of products that they created using that lens have outperformed their other products by 75%. So it was a massive value generator, but it took literally from the CEO all the way down to every employee within the organization to shift that mindset into using that lens as a way to think and behave and new questions to ask. If we were to pull that back and look at things like frontline workers, I can use an example of SAP. I got to work very closely with some of their folks in the organization, and we actually have some PKE alums from SAP, so if they're there, hi. One of the things that was done that I thought was really brilliant is they took this incredible platform, and before it was client to client, and how they would outsource and how they would get things in people's hands. Well, they realized there were some really dramatic things happening. And I will just give one of the examples. There was a hospital being propped up in New York, and they had no hospital beds. And by allowing, the hospital was not a customer, the bed manufacturer was not a customer, but by allowing them to use this platform, they were able to connect the dots in literally less than 24 hours. And so we were able to help frontline workers by getting them access to PPE, by getting them access to oxygen in some instances, and all these things they couldn't find or need. And they created accessibility. So it's just a different way of a company, again, that is a very much for-profit company, contributing in a very different way by shifting their mindset as to what it was they wanted to contribute. I hope that answered a little bit of what you were asking. Anyone else? Okay, then we're gonna go.
I said yes, thank you, but I was muted and I was trying to unmute over there, but I have to unmute over here. Technology. Huh.
No worries.
Well, congratulations. This was a great.
Thanks. We still have a few more slides to go, so.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. It's good. Okay, so our last pop quiz poll: does your firm have an actuated DEI policy? Yes, no, we're starting to. And again, this isn't the cool slogan written on the wall. This is something that's strategic, that you've made commitments to, goals, KPIs. Looks like our no's are starting to lead the way here. Okay, just a couple more seconds, but it does look like we've got more no's. And then we've got some yeses, and we're starting to that are a bit comparable. So definitely something I would encourage everyone to consider and to take a peek at, because this is something that's really important as we continue to evolve and grow, and based on some of the crises of 2020, but that have been longstanding far before that. It's going to become ever more important that companies have clarity on where they stand, what they believe in, and we're going to start getting called out much more than ever before. So I think this is a really important one. Okay, one of our last slides. All of this can be overwhelming at the start, and I get asked all the time, what if my company doesn't have a purpose or they're not acting on it? Where do I start? And I love beginning the process with this inside out approach. So if we look at this inside out approach to change, it really starts with you. Get clear. And I think someone just mentioned Simon Sinek and why. Really get to the epicenter of your why. Really consider and think through your values and get really clear on you as an individual and what's most important to you, your purpose. Try writing it down and articulating it. There are a ton of different ways to approach it, but I think you are the most important ingredient. Once you get comfortable with that, try bringing it to your team. Don't get too far outside of the concentric rings, but to try developing a team with wisdom. Try and create trust and a commitment to purpose beyond these individual egos, which can be very hard at times. But when we think about, we all learned about high performance teams, this is one of the main ingredients. What's that higher order that we can all drive against in this team in order to impact outcomes in a different way? Once we get past that and you feel like you've got some mastery, take it to the organization. The organization, that's a bit of a heavier lift. That is definitely something that is where I see a lot of companies start to struggle, but developing this collection of organizational wisdom, making leaders and organizations more agile, more engaged, more accountable. And it's all of that, 4 steps we looked at, and then the unlocking and igniting, all of those things take place in that organizational step. And then finally, if we're able to accomplish these things, truly, one of the most fulfilling things you can ever do is bring this to a community. That's creating the team of teams and an interconnected community and networks united by a common purpose. This is where truly you can move mountains with this connective tissue called purpose that unites people. It brings them together, it inspires them, and it's a great combat to any kind of fatigue or burnout because it's very, very energizing. So here's my last big postulation of the day. All of us are looking at brand creation, whether you're building one from scratch or you're retooling and reinventing based on purpose, or just battling with today and all the things going on. When you do this, do not endeavor to make ads or simple creative. Make progress. All right, guys, I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Hey, Denise, this is Bill Markovitz. One question that popped up, which I think you kind of addressed a bit, was, based on your experience, how do companies that don't already have a purpose or are not purpose-driven, how do they get started? I know from your inside out and the 3-phase approach slide kind of addressed that. Did you have anything else to add there on how to get started?
Find a champion, find an advocate, find a partner. It's very hard to do alone. So I always try and get into a situation where find someone like-minded, use them as the sounding board, start co-creating with them. When you've built a little momentum, put some form around it. Start thinking through those various steps, because by the time you get the opportunity to present this either to a CEO, a board, you want to have thought through it. And I will tell you, the one thing that I hear all the time is competing resources. We don't have enough resources, but if you look at this as a value add in the sense of the business case, what does that company actually need? What can they gain by looking out into society and solving societal needs that will help them? You may be employee turnover. It may be generating new customers. Find the business case and create that compelling case before you ever get there. And then the conversation begins to change. The dynamic is much different than just, we need to do purpose. So do your due diligence, find some partners and some collaborators, come in with a united voice, and really think through the various touch points of that business case that's specific to your company individually.
That's great.
Hey, Denise, it's Peter Curtin. I wonder if you could just talk for a couple of minutes about the difference between a really good vision statement and purpose.
So yes, I think this is an interesting thing that's starting to come up more and more these days. If we look at purpose, purpose should answer the basic foundational question of why the company exists. Really get to the epicenter of all of that. I think when we get to vision, I think those are ways we're going to start actuating and ways we're going to look through a lens to get to. But the purpose is at the epicenter of why the organization actually exists today in this day and age.
Got it. Thanks.
Sure.
I got one other question that came up. It looks like the purpose-driven companies that have been successful are the B2C examples are very obvious. Do you see also companies shifting to being purpose-driven that are more B2B as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I think some great examples. SAP definitely falls into that category. They've been leading with purpose for quite some time and really leaning in hard. I think some of our consultants, when we look at what they're driving against, Deloitte is doing a great job right now. They have fully adopted purpose. Salesforce, in some capacities, has done a great job, definitely changing their ethos and their purpose of how they operate. And then one I just spoke to the other day, it was, sorry, can't remember the name at this exact moment, but again, the last set of data that was just released like a day or two ago, the largest growing category is B2B in terms of starting to adopt purpose, starting to lead with values, and starting to really select which of these societal issues they're willing to invest in, commit to, and talk about. All right, guys. Well, if no more questions, I just wanted to say thank you for hanging in with me for this hour, for engaging with all these excellent, excellent questions, for keeping your energy this whole time, and for just showing up to support PKE. It's a program that is so near and dear to my heart. I love getting to see alums from all over the place and some friends and some classmates. So I think our friends are going to give us a small survey at the end that we would love for you to fill out, just so we can continue doing all of this.
Thank you, Denise, so much for your valuable insights today. I learned a great deal. I do want to thank Bill Barkowitz and Dr. David Smith for your time and insights today, as well, again, as Denise. Your information is very valuable and timely in today's and present day, and we really appreciate your expertise. I would also like to thank everyone here for being a part of the PKE community, and we truly hope you'll engage with our PKE, with one another, and with our students to enhance, your cohorts as well as the Graziadio Business School. So again, thank you. We hope to see you on June 10th at our next event with Dr. John Scully. Thanks again for being here.